So remember, we have a research paper due today. We're going to have a grace period until midnight tonight if you're still thinking about getting it in on time. So it's research paper number 1, 4 to 6 pages in length. Assigned topics are there. Speak to me if there's some kind of issue with a topic that is holding you back or something. I do accept stuff late, but there's a 10% per week penalty for what's late, and the penalty starts after midnight tonight, so do get it in as soon as you can. A 10% penalty is not that bad, but not doing it all would result in a failing grade by the midterm, because numerically there's just no way you can pass without doing this essay. So go ahead and do this essay, and if I can be of help, let me know, okay? And there's the prompt under assignments, research paper number 1, if you still need to look for it. Any questions about it or about that policy? It's usually the people attending in class are the ones who got it in, but if they didn't, remember you can get it in late for a small penalty, but the penalty grows. So here's a nice link. Coming up next week, we have a little in-class thing that we're doing. And so hopefully it's going to be fun, because we don't often get to talk about media, the content of media. So we're going to be doing that in class. I'm just checking out dates here. Find the exact day that we're doing this. So on March 8th, which I believe is let's see. Today is February 27th. Thursday is March 1st. Next Tuesday there's no class because there's an all-college flex day. So no, you won't have any classes because that's flex day. Am I right on that? Have other teachers been telling you that too? Okay, good. Thank you. And then, so Thursday next week is when we want to do this advertising analysis. So what this is you're looking at some advertising and you're getting a sense from the advertisement as to who the target audience is, why they took these particular strategies to reach that audience and stuff. So there's really no wrong answer possible on this type of analysis. It's more going to be, can you justify your point of view on this? When you look at, a particular advertisement which has, I don't know, classic rock music and it's for golf clubs or Viagra or something like that, you kind of know that it's going to be targeted at a particular audience. And there are certain things that you can talk about in the advertisement as to why it's directed at that audience. So last semester we did this with some still images, and it was fun and it worked out really well. So what we do is we just get together in little groups so you can discuss it, and then this is during class on the 8th. And so you can discuss the advertisement and answer these questions, and then we take about 20 minutes to do that, and then we just have one member or the whole group itself just comes up in the front and says, well, we looked at this ad, and we all look at it, and then we say, oh, and this is what we were getting from it, and then we have a little discussion about that. Okay? So if you're in class, that's how it works. If you're at home, you do the same sort of thing, but you actually have to type in your answers and submit them online in order to get credit. So it's much more fun to be in class to do this. So that would be March 8th, which would be Thursday next week. Since Tuesday next week is off, we'll talk about this more in detail at our next class, Thursday of this week. Does that make sense? So on March 1st, we're going to discuss this a little further. But the advertisements we're going to look at this time are not going to be stills, but I thought it'd be fun to look at Super Bowl ads. So for the moment, this just says, take a look, if you have some time, take a look at some of the ads that are up on this website, this is basically everything that was on the Super Bowl. Now, if you watch the game or you're already aware of an ad, that would be great. If you want to work on that particular ad, that's great. If you have time between now and next class to just look these over and figure, oh, okay, which ad would be good. If you can't remember who the product is for, you could maybe remember like what time code it arrives at in this video, just so we can all, next class we could say, oh yeah, I wanted to work on that Wix ad or something like that. And then we could maybe see if you could already get together in a little group, and then we'll have that kind of set up, okay? So this is low stakes, it's 25 points. That's a quarter of what the term paper is due, the research paper is. So, and people usually do pretty well here as long as they participate and do it. So, and it can be fun. Like you're looking at actual big time advertisements that are really well made and just answering a few questions about it. So, questions about all of that?
So we're doing that next week.
That's right. The actual sitting groups and work on it is March 8th, which is Thursday next week.
Okay.
On Thursday of this week, we'll just catch up a little bit more on this. I'll say, here are the questions you're going to be thinking about. Okay, but it's all happening March 8th, next Thursday. Next week, Thursday next week.
I don't think a lot of that struggle, huh?
It's because there's, since usually I would talk about that Tuesday next week, and then on Thursday we'd actually do it, but we're off Tuesday next week because of Flex Day, so it gets more complicated. Or maybe not. Maybe I just overthink all this stuff. Just wanted to let you know. And again, a reminder, term paper is your #1 priority if you haven't got it in yet. Get it in tonight before any penalties start, and then there's a 10% penalty, which is really quite small, versus not doing it all, which is what I fear sometimes. Okay, so Katya is here. Hello, folks. Just seeing if there's any questions about this upcoming thing that we're doing, showing up. Nothing yet. So we'll check back in. Cool. Righto. So this week, talking about mobile technology, and there's our chapter, and also a very good thing that I thought I'd opened up in preview, which is, where is it? So this is a nice resource from, the only thing that you have to bear in mind is that Qualcomm is a chip manufacturer for mobile phones. And so they're going to tell this story in a way that celebrates their great achievements, right? So just be aware that there are competitors, and they might not say Qualcomm did everything, all the rest of it. But this is available to you through our website, and it's a nice summary of how we got to where we are now in terms of mobile technology and standards. So for a second, just think about how about we just make up a quick list, things that you can do because you've got a mobile device that you couldn't do before we had smartphones. So one of them would, of course, be to make phone calls, which, the cell phone brought that into being a possibility. But what else could you do, like on a day-to-day basis, that mobility helps you do?
Take pictures.
Pictures, okay, but you could do that with a camera, right? But how about take and share pictures?
Yeah, they're not accurate.
Instantly. That would be a good one. So I'm just building on yours, Ron. Others? What else do you do with your mobile device that you couldn't do before? Yeah, Jonah?
You can look up any piece of information.
Ooh, yeah, okay. So find information. I could say again, instantly, you could have gone to the library before, but boy, is that ever. Yeah, so I read an interesting piece, by the way, in the, I can't remember where it was just surfing everywhere. But it was making a claim that because now there's a generation growing up who can, find out so much based on their device, that there might be a different mindset, which before it would have been, oh, I don't know that, I don't know about that, let's forget about it because we can't figure that out. Versus now, you can look up so much, find out the answer to so many questions, that it may be making people a lot more confident in their ability to, hey, we can find anything out. We can solve all of this stuff because it's right here. And that might be a huge change based on, my generation was like, I'm not going to go to the library to find that out. So if we don't know, just forget about it. But now it's like, it's all there. Andrea, did you have one?
You can record.
Okay, so you could record, and so I'm connecting that to this. Yeah, again, you could have like taken a Super 8 movie or something, but you can record and share instantly, and that makes a huge difference. If your plane flies into a building, it's like we used to count on CNN for that, but now we would have like thousands of personal cell phone videos that would just flood right away.
Scary.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So that's a change.
Well, you're saying if a plane flew into a building.
I'm thinking of 911 just because
Yeah,
there's a class I teach tomorrow about.
Just imagine somebody live streaming that from the plane and like that.
Oh
is so
boy,
yeah.
that would really be
I thought
scary,
that's
right?
what you were saying.
No, I was thinking more on the ground, but one way or the
okay.
other. Have you guys seen Fahrenheit 9/11, the documentary Dylan has? Oh, I would highly recommend it if you want to. It's a documentary that spends a lot of time building up the argument that 9/11 happened not just because of evil terrorists, but also because of people getting shocked and enraged at the U.S. Participation in global events and stuff. Now, you could agree or disagree with the premise of the film, which is it's a Roger Moore film, right? So it's not Michael Moore film. Roger Moore is James Bond. So it's a Michael Moore film. So it has a very, very explicit, some would say biased point of view. You might disagree with it. But the first 10 minutes of it, which kind of recreates the day of 9/11, is incredibly powerful, and of course it's then used manipulatively to say this is the most awful thing that ever happened. Here are the culprits, and of course they focus on the neoconservatives in the U.S. government and stuff like that. Again, you could disagree with that, but the power of the filmmaking, of seeing the buildings collapse, and he found footage of of news camera works there's just dust and ash and paper flying everywhere, and people running through the streets and crying and stuff. It's I've never seen such an evocation of how horrible that could be. So all of that is focused in that little film. But of course, what we were saying is now it would be just flying through social media in a way that didn't exist at that time. Instant sharing and stuff. So yeah. Okay, close that parenthesis. Anyone got something more positive that we could do? I like the idea we could take nice pictures and share it. And other stuff that mobility brings to us.
We can connect with other people.
Yeah, connecting with other people. And you had your hand up back there?
Directions, if we need to find.
Okay.
Navigation, yeah.
So mapping, directions, absolutely. My car died 2 weeks ago, and I had to instantly figure out where to go, how to get places and stuff, and so if it wasn't constantly Uber, which was going to be too expensive, I also just needed to know public transportation, how to get places and stuff. So that was real important. And then Ron says connect with people. And that's a huge thing as well, in the sense that you used to have to give a time and place. We'll meet up at 2 here. And there was really no way to contact anybody. So I'm telling you, like, this is like, wow, but this is how it was, right? So you have to really keep your appointment and go there. And if you were going to be late or something, there's really no way to talk to anybody about it or stuff. Versus now, you can be like hanging out, find out, you know, my friend is in this general area. Let me shoot them a text and say, let's meet up over here. You know, kind of real time pulling together stuff on the fly, which again is like second nature. It was like absolutely unheard of, you know. So that's bringing about huge changes just in the way that people do these little social things in their lives, you know. And so yeah, this is all the result of mobility, and I'm sure a lot more. You know, we're not even saying the obvious things about watching TV on your phone while you're waiting for the bus, or you know, anything like that. Kill a few minutes by listening to a podcast or something. So it's huge. It's really a gigantic change with all kinds of social implications for how people do stuff. And that's really complex. But what is a little bit more simple is the stuff that Qualcomm is talking to us about, which is the technical advances that led to this and some of the challenges. You know. And me, even if I don't understand super well the technology behind it, I'm always amazed at how ingenious it is, you know, to actually, that the engineers figured out how to do this, you know. Just pointing out again some of the obvious stuff that is concentrated in your phone, you know, and some of the challenges, you know. So phone manufacturers, of course, have been working on some of this, but a lot of this goes, you know, to the heart of the broadband, the mobile experience is just getting the speed of data necessary in order to get, you know, really good graphics and high quality multimedia, and also making sure that the connections are reliable enough so that your data is not constantly dropping out and stuttering and stuff. So that has been a big challenge. And when you see 1G, 2G, 3G, 3G LTE, which is really 4G, and there's going to be upcoming 5G. That's describing the technological advances that actually made all this possible. Whoops, did I just go up there? I went too far. Oh no! This is the progress which has brought us to this point, right? And so it's a nice summary here, basically. So your 1G was the original cell networks, which were so primitive by today's standards and so limited that it made a telephone service just for, you know, the very few people in the population who could afford those really expensive analog cell phones and carry them around. And there's a picture in your textbook of this dude holding up, right? It's just about, it's the size of a brick, the size and weight of a brick, right? And all it did was make one phone call, right? That's the other thing. And that was 1973, the Bell Labs, you know. So that would have been on, you know, these 1G networks, which, because they were analog networks, one of the huge limitations was for everyone who wanted to make a call, you had to have a dedicated line. So if you wanted to let 1,000 people like make phone calls in your system, you had to potentially have like 1,000 connections that you could make. And even if only 5 people were calling at that time, you basically had to reserve like 1,000 in case 1,000 people wanted to do a call. Because as soon as you connected, that tied up a line basically. Versus what we have now since 3G is the ability for tons of subscribers to be basically on the same channel, you know, and that was a huge advance, right? 1G analog connections and really limited. 2G, it goes digital, which means that now you're able to get a bunch of subscribers onto the line, onto the same line. Remember we talked about the internet as being packet switched, so that everything would be chunked into packages and then sent the most efficient way. So in your digital technologies, in the 2G, we're not quite there yet, but what they can do is that they have a much more efficient, compressed use of the channels that they have. Then when they get into 3G, that's when you start having packet switch data, which really allows for the most efficient use of the channels that you've got. In addition, of course, they're adding all kinds of channels and infrastructure as they go along. So looking at the summary of the 1G networks, you basically, the cell phone operators had to license from the government the frequencies that they would use for their services. But it was incredibly inefficient because they had to, every time somebody made a call, they tied up those particular frequencies, right? So that was going to be an issue. And then if you think about the towers and all of that, that was another thing. Nowadays, we move seamlessly from one area to another, covered by different towers, right? But back in the day, you were either connected to one tower or another, and it would break. The connection would break as you moved out of the area for one and into the area for another. And that was still a challenge as they tried to, make a seamless kind of handoff between one tower to another. So they had to work on that too. So that's been, a lot of the challenges were basically there. So 2G comes about because it's digital. You can squeeze more subscribers into a channel. Digital voice compressed into smaller packages. So that's when you used to get this kind of quality on a cell phone. It didn't sound too good. Now, of course, it sounds a lot better. But this kind of compression was giving that effect. And the other thing is, when you're having a conversation with somebody, there's a lot of silence in there, right? But in the 2G network, you still had to transmit all those silences. Versus now, if you don't talk, the system fills in all those silences with data from other people's conversations. So they're really just cramming everything in. And if there's like a moment of silence, you can't hear it. But over the network, there's tons of other data that's being filled in there. That's how they're using it, like so efficiently. It's incredible, So those give you more voice capacity. Dylan?
What you're saying is during like 2G, like when there would be like silences, like someone's talking and you're just listening, there'd be static in between it, like.
No, they'd still transmit bits, which would say, okay, there's silence here. Right? Uh-huh. They could never just take those bits and use it for something else.
Interesting.
Yeah, so again, it's wasteful.
Yeah.
It's not as wasteful as having a dedicated connection for every line, but it's still wasteful. Mm-hmm. So in 3G, they figured, 3G is basically the turning point where both data and voice transmission are chunked. Let's get to that point here. Where are we? Ooh, they got a lot to say about this. So, finding the right type. What's happening here? Data opt. Oh my God, there's a lot of different. There's EV. So CDMA was one of the technologies that came in. So CDMA refers to the chunking of data in voice voice communications, and then EVDO is also bringing in the data and broadband. So when you get to 3G, all of these things start flying around, and you don't need to worry about it. There's no questions that they're that in depth on the exam or something like that. But within 3G, basically what they were able to do was make it much more efficient. So all voice is now digital, of course, but it gets chunked just like data. And it gets privileged on the network so that, because you don't want to have like a dropout in your voice conversation. So if there's voice and data flying down the same channel at the same time, voice will be privileged. They'll let that go through first. And then data fills in like everywhere that there's a little gap or something like that. And it's all chunked into packets so that it can be sent as efficiently as possible. And this is really what leads to useful digital data services and telephone as well. So this is still operative on your phone when you don't see an LTE connection. When you're looking at, you're getting 3G basically, but it's being enhanced so much, and there's different protocols that have come in. I wouldn't even begin to be able to tell you about the complexity of it and stuff. But if you look this over, if you're that interested, you can see a lot more. Anyhow, so what's going on here is you got all these voice conversations, which are basically all chunked up and coded so that they can go, be transmitted to you. And basically, when you're on this, let's say you're this conversation, all these others are also being carried on the same channel, but your voice is encoded in such a way that it is decoded at the receiver end, so you just hear your conversation and nothing else. And meanwhile, data, as I said, gets folded in there in all the kind of down moments when people are not talking. So it really gets pretty amazing. Remember, we talked about the difficulty of managing the connection to the cell phone tower. So it used to be the closer you were to the tower, the better the connection and the better service you got. It's now, however, it's adaptive. So whether you're close or far to the cell phone tower, your receiver unit is treated with the same priority. So it's fair to everybody. Basically, even if you're far from the tower, it will be there'll be compensation, so you get the same service no matter where you are in relation to the tower, which is a pretty cool and smart thing to do. And then the other thing that they did, which is interesting, is whoops, I don't even know where this picture is to show this, but basically you are receiving signal from several towers. Your phone is just taking the best possible signal out of those, and so when you move from one service area to another, it's seamless. It's basically you're wherever you are, you may be getting from two different towers, or you may be solidly within one, but there's no handoff, there's no break in there. Whoa, amazing. 4G takes the same set of enhancements, just makes them faster and better. That's all. So the big revolution is with 3G. 4G, there's just simply a faster connection, and also better interactivity between your receiver set and the cell towers that are out there. So that's what LTE is basically. So you may, part of the way that they improved the data flow, the speed of data, is simply, again, if you're attached to several towers, or you can basically pick up data through multiple channels as long as there's not a whole lot of users. Instead of wasting any of the bandwidth that they've got, they'll send you data faster, and the LTE system can handle reaching you through several channels at once. So there's all kinds of considerations. Again, I'm not technical enough to really understand all of it, but I think it's really quite amazing what they've come up with. And versus the early days of 3G, there were different systems, like Verizon was CDMA and AT&T was another one. Nowadays, 4G LTE is like a global standard. Everyone uses it, which means that the device manufacturers, they can just make just one kind of phone for the entire world and that kind of thing. So all of that is pretty cool, if you ask me. So now you know about 3G, 4G. The projected that there will be 5G in 2020, which promises faster connections, and that's basically more of what we're getting already, as far as I know. But you may want to find out more about it. So thoughts or comments on that? think it's pretty amazing how they've progressed in that way. So, to the textbook, which takes a little bit more of a slow development on this. But let's see. Oh, we got a video. We got a video for sure on this. It's not a bad video at all. So let's just see.
Mr. Watson, come here! Supposedly the very first telephone call. It was made by Alexander Graham Bell in 1876. But the year before, he made the crucial breakthrough, namely that you could transmit more than just a single note. Electromagnetically, you could transmit whole sounds. And he did it using this gallows framed telephone, a vibrating reed against a diaphragm. The telephone was born. Up until as recently as the 1970s, telephone calls were connected by a copper wire from your house all the way to a local telephone exchange like this, manned by, invariably, women who would connect your call into the socket of another household. Hey presto, you could chat. But the post office believed correctly that people couldn't remember long telephone numbers. So instead, everyone had a code. There were hundreds in London, and my one in North London was Canonbury. C-A-N. And to this day, I still have 226 in my telephone number. This can lay claim to being the very first mobile phone. It was used in the 1930s by a Brighton police station to speak to bobbies on the beat, though it was one way. If the policeman wanted to speak to the station, they had to go and find a payphone. But hey, it was a start, and it led to this beauty, which is Britain's very first mobile phone, not using radio waves, using an analog cellular network. And it was launched in 1985. Maggie Thatcher liberalised the telephone market in the 1980s, and that allowed for the first time competition. And on the 1st of January 1985, Vodafone made the first call. I particularly love this 1986 XL model, designed for the first time to fit into a shirt pocket. Don't laugh, it's not much bigger than an iPhone 6. The story ends, for now at least, with the smartphone, little mini computers in your pocket. And to make a telephone call, you use a digital network. Though ironically, not many people use these things to speak to one another. They mostly use them to send messages, search for information, or watch little videos, like this one.
There's some hardware from England. Personal digital assistants. Anyone remember, heard of a Palm Pilot?
Palm Pilot?
Palm Pilot.
I've heard of that term.
You've heard of it?
I don't know what it is though.
It was a personal digital assistant, a kind of like a little notepad type of thing that you could write stuff down in. But it was actually not the first of that type of device. Let's just see. Apple's Newton was one, but I don't want to find a 20-minute one. Okay, here's a commercial, an infomercial back in the day for an Apple product you certainly didn't know existed before, I'm pretty sure. So this was a personal digital assistant. You could keep phone numbers in it. You could, it'll talk. It's trying to sell you on all the functions. This is from the day.
Newton's about a lot of things, really.
I think the part that excites me the most
has to do with helping people keep in touch.
The idea behind Newton is that it's an assistant, something that actively helps you as you capture, organize, and communicate your ideas and information.
The possibilities are just limitless.
When you think about it, the most natural way to get your thoughts down is to jot or to sketch.
We wanted Newton to be that natural.
Say you're on a train or a plane.
Or at a little cafe.
You can write a fax.
Say you want to send that fax to Margaret.
You just highlight Margaret's name in the text, tap fax.
And Newton will automatically fill out a fax cover sheet with Margaret's number on it.
We've built in Newton Intelligence so that Newton knows enough about what you're trying to do to help you do it.
The beauty of Newton is that any page you have in your Newton can be sent through email.
Text, graphics, pages from your calendar, business cards.
You just select email and, well, you send it.
Simple as that.
It seems to happen all the time these days. You're expecting a really important message, but you can't guarantee you're going to be easy to reach.
By just getting the Newton messaging card, you can get your message wherever you go. You can share anything that's in your Newton with anyone else. Using Newton's built-in infrared networking capability, you can beam things to other people.
It's pretty handy in meetings to just be able to send someone something instantly. Your business card, or the notes, or a calendar page.
You can even jot notes to jog your memory later or set an alarm.
Or add a task to your to-do list.
Kind of a communication center, or universal inbox and outbox.
The Newton Connection Kit lets you connect your Newton to your PC or your Macintosh and share and store information. This is all about being in charge of your life, being able to have information so you can keep in touch with people.
It's going to help you keep track of your time and your contacts, but it's going to do it in a way that's not intrusive to your lifestyle.
I'd say that Newton is really peace of mind, right in the palm of your hand.
So what do you think? What do you think about that? Yeah, Jonah?
I think that Steve Jobs is a genius. Like, he kind of, I mean, that basically is the iPad. But it, like, I know when it came out, it like totally flopped. It did not do well at all.
That's right, because they
like surprised, like people did not get it at all.
well, also they didn't, you didn't have like the Wi-Fi in your home or anything to make it easy to use. Yeah.
But it's like pretty cool that like they were still able to like make that, however many 15 plus years later.
96. Yeah, that was 1996.
Probably like 10, 15 years later.
Yeah, they had.
That's like one of their most successful products. So.
Yeah, they had figured out the potential uses. They just didn't have yet quite the technology to do it. Dylan, what is?
I was gonna ask, like, do you know who shot that ad?
No, I don't know.
Because I know, like, Chiat was like behind Apple for a long time. My dad actually worked for that ad.
Oh, okay.
So I was just curious if they shot that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. My good buddy from school, his brother was a product manager, and I thought it was actually Hyatt Day, but I guess it's Chiat Day.
Yeah.
But they used them for everything at that time. And that was when John Scully was the president. Jobs had been kicked out, but they had a lot of Jobs' good ideas, but they just didn't have his ruthless, kind of product control. Because, so I think the Newton was his idea, but it was a Scully product rollout, and they just dropped the ball like they did on so many things. But it was, I find it amazing, just like kind of a parallel universe, plus everyone looks like they're from a 1990s rom-com or something like that, the curly hair and the big blousy shirts and stuff. But it's kind of cool. Kind of cool. So the Newton was it shows that they were thinking through what a data device might be at the time. And you saw that huge modem that you had to, like a cell modem that you had to kind of fit in there in order. It was like, you can email everything, but how about text messaging or something like that? So it's really interesting to see, what the Newton was at that time. But wasn't quite ready yet for all of it, right? Right, so Newton, okay. There's some coverage, some talk in the textbook anyway about social controversy, and I guess, we talked about this a little bit in the first few classes we talked to, so, some in the midst of all our understanding of like how this is revolutionary, how it's changed so much, it's also, there's some discussion of disadvantages of being so constantly connected as well, which I think we saw some of that. There's probably more we can talk about that maybe next class as well. I have some stuff which is, a little more illustrative of the controversies that would come up. VoIP, so phone calls over the internet. we talked about the importance of, how packet switching made cell networks so much more efficient, which is important. Does anything here? Yeah, okay. Skype versus regular telephony and stuff. So I have some stuff on that, which is, I think I took it offline because I didn't want to kind of overwhelm you with stuff. But I think this works better if we actually download it too. So this is an additional stuff that I threw in there if it will work. Yeah, I mean, part of what is so interesting about all of this as well is, the pure flexibility of the protocols and the and the way that they operate over the mobile networks. So, drawing off the point in the textbook, or building on it. Let's say the point in the textbook, which is basically like, with 3G, what becomes so important is that you treat voice just like data. It all gets chunked into packets, and you can, prioritize the voice packets and, fill in with data afterwards. But what also is going on is within the data stream, being able to use your packets for all kinds of applications that we're only beginning to think about now with the Internet of Things. So, in this class we talk about the Internet as, being, this amazing conduit for video, for audio and stuff like that. And then you realize that that can operate over a mobile network just as well as it can operate in your home. But the other thing is, it's just a data stream, right? And so you can put all kinds of other data into that stream so that, your car can become more intelligent, which we're on our way to doing that. So it can, be communicating, position, but also, breakdown information or anything else like that can be built into the car. And your fridge can be just as smart. It can know what kind of food you got in there, currently every product has a barcode, but we can make those barcodes, electromagnetic as well, so that everything in your fridge can basically be registered with your fridge, and your fridge can connect to, whatever grocery supply outlet you privilege, and then you can have automatically updated stuff in your fridge, and it just it just goes on and on. So this Internet of Things, it is the Internet. That's the incredible thing about it. It's just finding out different ways of basically collecting data and sharing it with who knows what. Over the Internet. But it's the same. Remember we talked about TCP IP? The IP, the Internet Protocol, can easily be adapted for all of this. So it can carry your voice, it can carry your television shows and your Spotify. It can also carry all the information about the food in your fridge that's necessary to automatically restock it or something like that, So it's just getting, I don't know, some see it as better and better, others maybe not, So all of that, remember we talked about TCP IP, right? So Internet Protocol is that's what we talked about, this packet delivery of data, right? So that's the, fundamental protocol, which is just like a language. It's like, okay, we're going to chunk up your telephone call and we're going to chunk up your stock quotes, and we can basically send those to you mobile, and on the at the receiving end we'll reassemble all of that so you've got a phone call and you can also look at your stock quotes or whatever else, right? So that is what they call best effort packet delivery. That means they're just shooting it at you as best that they can. The TCP, which came before IP, what's important about that is it's error checked. It makes sure that every packet that gets sent to you is reassembled at the end. And if there's any packets missing, it'll call out for them again and wait until everything can be reassembled. And so it's a more reliable, error-checked protocol. And then there's this other one called UDP, optimized for the fastest delivery. So a great example of UDP would be Skype, right? And there, what's important is that the data get to you as fast as possible, so that there are less gaps in your Skype conversation or something like that. So I love this. They call it spray and pray. It's like just hope that you get as many packets as possible, but they just shoot it as fast as they possibly can. So that's why Skype, sometimes the quality can suck a little bit. But what's more important is that there's some kind of the fastest possible connection is happening there. Even if, it drops out, or if the audio quality goes down or something, which wouldn't happen in TCP, where, it's making sure that you get the absolute best connection possible. And then the HTTP, that's for web, hypertext transfer protocol is for the web, but there are all kinds of aspects in HTTP which can still be used to, for instance, send, he needs 5 more rolls of toilet paper because he's almost out or whatever. So, that can actually run over HTTP, all that kind of stuff. So, these protocols, every time you've looked for a web address, you've seen HTTP already, so we know that it brings us web pages. But it can also be used to call out for, for whatever, which could include toilet paper or, more homework assignments for your kid or stuff like that. So it's I don't know how much more I want to go into this today, but. Yeah, let's leave that there. But it just is telling us that a lot of the basic systems that we need for things like the Internet of Things are already in place, and we're just really using the same technology that's there. We're adapting it and using it in different ways. So additional. Anyone made a phone call over from their computer recently? Dylan, how was the quality?
I mean, using like FaceTime through Apple, it's pretty good. Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. Prior to that, it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Andrea?
I once didn't have a phone, so I had to call someone through my laptop just by Googling online phone call.
How did it go?
Terrible.
Yeah.
It was so bad.
Yeah.
I think the person I called could hear me, but I couldn't hear them at all. It would sound so choppy.
Yeah.
This is not good.
Yeah, I agree. I remember as the worst one, I think, was talking to a candidate for a job or something. I was on a hiring committee, and they were coming through Google, whatever it was, Google phone call or something. I don't know what it was. It was VoIP. It just sucked. And it was terrible. You'd ask a question and you'd hear half the answer, and then you wouldn't hear, and then it would come back. And it was dude, could you just get a real phone and call me back, because this is not good for you. So yeah, VoIP could be pretty bad, but FaceTime is absolutely incredible. I don't personally know what they're using for FaceTime, but it's pretty cool how good it is, right? I mean, that alone, just having, a voice and video interaction on a phone, that was science fiction. I remember being a kid, even a teenager, thinking one day we'll be able to do that. When you think back that was such an advance. I'm trying to think of what I'm going to ask questions about in the Kahoots coming up. So I know the Newton is on there. I mean, of course, none of that is going to affect your grade or anything, because we do it just for fun. But I know also the concept of over the top, OTT, is important. So we might have talked already about that in terms of smart TVs and stuff. But basically, OTT refers to any multimedia, rich media, or multimedia content that's being sent over the internet. So when they talk about over-the-top television, they're talking about being able to plug an Ethernet cable into your TV, or using Chromecast or something like that, which would be a wireless connection to your Wi-Fi, or Apple TV, same type of thing. Or let me see, anybody else using any other kinds of, some other services? Well, some of them are listed. Anyway, so it basically refers to, you know, getting your television set onto a network, and thereby getting the signal that's coming into your TV, not through the terrestrial television frequencies, which are set up aside for regular TV, not through your cable operator like Comcast, at least, you know, the bundle of channels they sell you, but instead through their internet connection. So it opens the door to all of this that we know and appreciate. So I guess, yeah, so that's what we call over the top, which, you know, usually would mean like crazy, but it just means, what they mean is over the top of the set-top box. So they're referring to, you know, an image of, you got your TV at home, and it was usually regulated by a cable box on the top, which, you know, you would switch your channels and stuff like that. So when they talk about over the top, they mean it doesn't plug into the cable box at all. It's from the internet, and it's feeding your TV. So that's why they call it over the top. That might help you just remember what the hell it's all about. So there's a point in here which is actually some controversy in terms of your cable company, is that you know, they've been renting those set-top boxes as part of your cable package for oh so long. You know, you can't get those 200 channels unless you've got the cable set-top box, and those were proprietary. Each cable operator would not allow you to just buy a box and connect it to them. I mean, you could buy the box, but you would then have to buy a chip from them, which was like a decoder chip that would go into the box. Whatever, it was one of the many irritants that people had dealing with cable companies. Like, why do I have to rent this thing for like 10 years? This is ridiculous, you know? Or why do I mean, I have a box, but why do I have to like wait for you to mail me a decoder card to stick into it? So that's been one thing where the FCC is being, you know, sort of saying, well, maybe we could force them to, you know, allow third parties to play in that space. And as you see, it's all as cables on the way out anyway, right? Yeah, and over at Mission Campus, my dear colleague Manuel sits in his office there, and he's got Sling TV on all day long. So it takes any of his Comcast channels and makes it available on his computer at work, so he can watch. Hello, Manuel. He can watch Sling TV all day long. So that's a different thing, where you can take regular cable channels and turn them into basically OTT. So that's kind of crazy. And this, you know, this concept of time shifting, so that's been with us for quite a while, where you could, you know, instead of being tied to a broadcast of, you know, I don't know, some show that comes on at 8 o'clock, you could then watch it later on with your DVR. So obviously now we're entering in a period of on-demand. By on-demand, they mean anytime you want, anywhere you want, you can see whatever you want. That is the goal now, basically. Which, when we get into TV ratings and stuff, it just completely blows up TV ratings and stuff like that. Yeah, so other digital devices. Wow. You guys recognize any of those? Do you remember what webcams? Any of those that strike your interest? Google Glass. Did you guys know anybody who had Google Glass? No? Didn't go down too well. It was, yeah?
I'd say that's a fad that died out quickly.
That died, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that.
Yeah. My wife was telling me last night that there's a basically another what company was it? I thought she said it, and I thought, oh, I got to tell them about it, right? I don't know if it's Adobe. I'm not sure. It's I think what people objected to with the Google Glass was the idea that you could be recorded in all your interactions. Like someone wearing the glasses could be like recording what was going on. So, but that was just part of the other part of the Google Glass was just there was a kind of a display in there. So, and I think that's still catching on. And so what she was telling me about is a new product, which basically does the same thing. Is like basically you can project data into the glass. So you're seeing both reality plus the augmented reality, which is like the data up there.
Is it the HoloLens?
I think it is, yeah, exactly. So do you know more about it, Jonah?
It's basically like augmented reality. Like I remember seeing like early like renderings of like what it's supposed to do.
Okay.
So like you kind of see, like you basically like see like how they have all that augmented reality for like the Google phones. It's
right.
Like that.
Yeah.
So like in a lens.
Yeah.
It's more interactive.
So that's it. So I guess it's probably just like closer to coming to market or something that she had heard about it. So when did you hear about it? Like a while back?
Yeah, like a few years ago.
Oh yeah, okay.
But I had a friend recently who did one of those like escape rooms.
Yeah.
And it was like all with HoloLens. Like everyone had a HoloLens on it.
Totally cool. So they actually put them on their. Yeah. Okay.
I think they like had to do something like through that too.
I gotta try that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's
So sci-fi like Ghost in the Shell.
it's what?
It's not so sci-fi like
Yeah.
I don't know, Sword Art Online or something like that.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting. Like from what I've been hearing, I mean, and myself anyway, I've been hearing about VR for like ever since I went into studies. Like 20 years ago, and it's always like almost there or whatever. Like 20 years ago, it was supposedly almost there. And you think that, oh, well, that'll be great when it's fully immersive. But I'm pretty sure what we're going to see a lot before we get into something convincing, fully immersive simulations, which I'm sure we'll get to eventually, and it'll be mind-blowing. But prior to that is going to be more and more augmented reality, where just there's different ways of basically layering data on top of what's going on in front of us, and so that can be Pokemon Go, right? It was like those kinds of things. It's brief but intense. People were interested.
What exactly is augmented reality?
I mean, it's basically finding a way of layering into your regular perceptual environment data. Whether it's in glasses, which gives you kind of an overlay, or just taking your phone and you'll see that IKEA bookshelf in the corner of your room.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Be like, we could have this class in augmented reality, like you could sit at home and then like
essentially be like
always
looking
sitting like in your living room, like standing there rather than like streaming it on.
Right.
Crazy.
Right.
That would be like a sense of it.
Yeah. Versus putting on a head-mounted display, and when Jonah has something to say, you could just turn around and you could see him there and that representation.
Weird.
So yeah, it turns into like so many different possibilities that I'm just and I'm sure it's same for you guys. You're just beginning to think about it. For me, it was like always going to be like Oculus Rift or something. Everything's got to be fully immersive, but then you realize there's all these other things going on. That are probably going to come out before we have, amazing, full resolution, immersive, completely interactive environments, which is the dream, but it's probably going to take longer, And then there's I'm pretty sure that they, the makers of Google Glass did not think that there'd be so much of social resistance. So I guess that's another thing to bear in mind is some of this stuff may not come out as quickly as you think because of just people worrying about what's going on behind those glasses. What are you seeing when you see that? It's like how come you're not looking at me because you keep on looking up at what's this person's? Oh, have you guys seen? I'm gonna show this in another class on Thursday. The Black Mirror episode where the young woman becomes obsessed with raising her social media scores. You've seen that one? Do you remember the name of the title by any chance?
Nosedive.
Pardon me? Nosedive. That's right. Anybody else seen Nosedive?
I seen it. I hated that episode.
You didn't like it? How come? Did it make you feel bad about social media? And
Yeah,
stuff?
it really did. It kind of offended me because like I kind of raised myself to not really care about what other people think of me, and now that like she literally goes through the mud trying to impress other people, and everybody else like looks down on her because she has like very few likes.
Yeah.
And she went through hell just to make it to this wedding for like this chick she didn't really care about. But only to do it to increase her own social standing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, do you have no self-respect?
Yes. That's a fantastic summary of what that whole episode was about. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like that in the beginning, like she ended up shunning dude because everybody else didn't want to be around him because he's just sad. And he's just being a human.
Yeah, yeah. It's a satire, right? But I mean, it kind of, that whole show always makes me come away feeling like a little bit like grossed out because what it's showing to us is like this satire, but there's a lot in there about what we could become if we're too tied to, you know, that kind of metadata about us and about that kind of things. That just reminded me. Andrea, what did you want to say?
I think I'd seen part of a movie that they could have based off that episode of. It was literally, it was disturbing, so I didn't watch it. But it was like about a woman who lived in this reality where everyone's hovering above everyone's head is like their score.
Okay.
On like how many likes they get.
Yeah.
And like basically in their life, the more likes they get, the higher they like are in their society.
Yeah.
Which it was disturbing because I think that's like really kind of what goes on in our reality in like a different way. But yeah, and it was just how she started getting like her likes started to go down, and she started to like she lost where she lived, and
yeah, well that might have been Nosedive.
to try to get her likes back up.
That might have been Nosedive or part of Nosedive this episode. So it's on Netflix. If you know, I highly recommend you check it out just because it is, you know, like one of the things that's a little different in it, but only slightly different is, what if, for instance, where you lived or your credit, you know, we know now that your credit score impacts how much you'll pay for something, right? Because if you have to buy it on credit and you have a low score, you won't get access to sweet loans or stuff like that, right? So we know that, but in this episode, it's just a little bit more. She finds a place that she really wants to live, but it's kind of a gated community, and they'll only, you know, it'll only be affordable to her if she brings her score up a little bit higher, right? And so that's when she falls into this trap of like, you know, she wants to get as many likes as possible, so she gets on board with this friend of hers who's getting married and stuff. But it's like, that to me was so intriguing that, you know, that your sort of ultimate, your global score could, you know, it's more subtle than just we don't want anyone who's less than a 4 out of 5 or something. It's more like it'll cost you another $300 a month rent if you are not like so that's where it gets creepy if you ask me, because it's like it is really reminiscent of what exists already, you know, whether it's your social, you know, whether it's your credit rating or you know, like could it be that you couldn't get cheap health insurance or less expensive health insurance unless you know, demonstrated that you were exercising and working out enough, that kind of stuff?
I thought about it in terms of like life. If you think about like what it means to like somebody, like not just on social media, but if no one likes you in reality, like your family members don't like you, or your friends don't, or you don't have friends because no one likes you, or your employer doesn't like you so they fire you, like you could end up like dying because no one likes you, no one's gonna try to help you.
You'd be at a disadvantage, right?
Yeah. That's where I thought it was weird, because I started to see that.
Yeah. And then you find out you can buy Twitter followers by the 10,000, you know, like, like a lot of these people with 1 million followers or stuff, it turns out they published a list. It's in the New York Times as well and stuff and other papers. But it's basically like they bought 500,000 followers and stuff like that. You can see the names of the people who did it and stuff. So yeah, it's like crazy, you know. Like then that whole system could be gamed. You know?
Yeah.
So that might lean into the conversation about the downsides of you know, like constant data collection and stuff like that. Well, we're out of time for today, but we can pick this up next class, and I highly recommend Nosedive, but don't see it if you're in a bad mood about about your social media standing or something. It'll depress you. It's kind of dark. Okay, well, we'll see you next class.